The last thing Nathan Reed remembered was working late in his quantum engineering lab. Now, he found himself in a chamber that defied earthly architecture, its walls flowing like liquid metal while maintaining perfect structural integrity. The air itself seemed to hum with energy, carrying an otherworldly scent that reminded him of ozone and starlight. He pushed himself to his feet, his head spinning from whatever method of transport had brought him here. The chamber's curved walls pulsed with a soft, azure glow that seemed to respond to his movements. As an engineer who specialized in experimental quantum mechanics, Nathan's first instinct wasn't fear, it was fascination. That fascination was quickly interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps, perfectly measured and rhythmic. The wall before him dissolved, revealing a figure that made him question everything he knew about humanoid anatomy. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her skin a deep violet that seemed to shimmer with bioluminescent patterns. Her features were sharp and elegant, but it was her eyes that captured his attention, silver irises that seemed to hold the wisdom of centuries. "So," she said, her voice carrying harmonic undertones that no human vocal cord could produce, "this is Earth's finest mind." Her tone carried equal parts curiosity and disdain. Nathan straightened his posture, refusing to be intimidated. "I prefer Nathan Reed." "And you are?" A flash of surprise crossed her alien features, quickly masked by practiced indifference. "I am Viera, Archon of the Stellar Dominion. Your kind would call me their queen, though that vastly oversimplifies my role." "Well, Archon Viera," Nathan said, keeping his voice steady, "I generally prefer my first introductions to involve less kidnapping." Her lips curved into what might have been amusement or annoyance. Nathan couldn't quite read alien expressions yet. "You speak boldly for someone in your position. Would cowering help?" He met her gaze directly. "Besides, if you wanted me dead, we wouldn't be having this conversation." Viera circled him slowly, her movements fluid and predatory. "Your species is fascinating. So primitive in so many ways, yet you possess an adaptability we've rarely encountered. Your quantum theories, while crude, show promise." Crude? Nathan couldn't help but feel defensive about his life's work. "Our understanding of quantum mechanics has revolutionized our technology." "Yes," she said, stopping directly in front of him. "Your species went from discovering atomic theory to quantum computing in less than 2 centuries. We've been watching. It's one of the reasons you're here." The chamber's walls shifted again, opening to reveal a vast view of space. Nathan's breath caught in his throat as he saw Earth in the distance, a blue marble suspended in the void. They were on a space station, or perhaps a ship, and the technology around him suddenly made his most advanced research seem like child's play. "Your world stands at a crossroads," Viera continued. "Your potential is intriguing. But potential without guidance can be dangerous." "Guidance?" Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Or control?" Her silver eyes narrowed. "You assume much. And you haven't denied it." To his surprise, Viera laughed, a sound like crystal wind chimes in a storm. "Most species we encounter either grovel in fear or lash out in primitive aggression. You analyze. Question. Perhaps there's hope for your kind after all." Before Nathan could respond, the chamber filled with other aliens similar to Viera but lacking her commanding presence. They regarded him with expressions ranging from curiosity to obvious disgust. "Archon," one of them spoke, his tone sharp. "The Council awaits your explanation for bringing this creature to our sanctuary." Viera's posture shifted subtly, but Nathan sensed the power dynamic immediately. Even she had to answer to someone. "Counselor Thorne," she addressed the speaker. "I've found a solution to our resonance cascade problem. This human's research into quantum field manipulation might be exactly what we need." Nathan's mind raced. Resonance cascade? The implications were staggering. If these beings were experiencing problems with quantum field stability, the entire fabric of spacetime could be at risk. A human? Thorne spat the word like a curse. Our civilization has mastered the stars for millennia. You suggest we need help from a species that still burns fossil fuels? Sometimes, Nathan interjected, unable to help himself, fresh eyes see what practiced ones miss. The chamber fell silent. Vieira's expression was unreadable, but Nathan thought he caught a glimmer of approval in those silver eyes. You will regret this, Archon, Thorne said quietly. The Council will not stand for such an insult to our heritage. As the counselors filed out, Vieira turned to Nathan. You realize you've just challenged the pride of beings who could reduce your planet to atoms? Nathan shrugged. Pride seems to be a universal constant, along with the blindness it brings. Besides, if you're really having problems with quantum field stability, you need help, my help, whether they like it or not. Vieira studied him for a long moment. You're either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish. I'm an engineer, Nathan replied. We prefer the term pragmatic. For the first time, Vieira's smile seemed genuine. Then, Nathan read, let's see if your pragmatism can save two civilizations. As he followed her deeper into the station, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into something far more complex than mere physics. The way Vieira moved, the subtle shifts in her expression when she looked at him, there was more at play here than just scientific cooperation. He was right. Neither of them knew it yet, but this was just the beginning of a story that would change both their worlds forever. The testing chamber was a perfect sphere of shifting metal and energy fields. Nathan stood in its center, trying to ignore the dozens of alien eyes watching him from the observation deck above. Among them, Vieira's silver gaze felt particularly heavy. Begin the trials, Counselor Thorne's voice echoed through the chamber. There was no hiding the anticipation of failure in his tone. The air around Nathan shimmed, and suddenly he was surrounded by a complex holographic representation of a quantum matrix. The kind of problem that would take Earth's most advanced computers months to solve. He had 10 minutes. Impossible, one of the counselors muttered. The human's primitive mind cannot possibly. Nathan was already moving, his hands dancing through the holographic interface as naturally as if he'd been born to it. Years of theoretical work had prepared him for this moment, even if he'd never imagined it would be on an alien space station. Your quantum field equations are elegant, he said, eyes never leaving his work, but they're too rigid. You're trying to force stability through perfect mathematical symmetry. That's your problem. He could feel Vieira's interest sharpen. Above him, the counselors muttered among themselves as he rapidly reconstructed the matrix, introducing controlled chaos elements that would seem counterintuitive to their ordered minds. Quantum fields aren't meant to be perfectly ordered, he continued, letting his hands flow through the complex calculations. They need room to breathe, to fluctuate within controlled parameters. Like jazz versus classical music, sometimes the notes that aren't played are as important as the ones that are. 8 minutes later, the holographic matrix pulsed with stable, harmonious energy. The chamber fell silent. Impossible, Thorne whispered again, but this time with a different inflection. Vieira's voice carried a note of triumph. The human has passed the first trial. Proceed to the second. The next 3 hours tested every aspect of Nathan's knowledge and creativity. Each challenge seemed designed to prove human inadequacy, yet each time he found solutions that left his observers in stunned silence. Not through superior knowledge, their technology was centuries ahead of Earth's, but through creative approaches their structured minds had never considered. Finally, exhausted but satisfied, Nathan completed the last trial. The holographics faded, leaving him alone in the center of the chamber. Above, the council appeared deeply disturbed by his success. Vieira descended to the chamber floor, her presence commanding as ever but now tinged with something new, respect, perhaps even admiration. You've proven yourself capable, she said, her harmonic voice carrying unusual warmth. But capability alone isn't enough. The real trial begins now. She led him through crystalline corridors to a vast laboratory that would make any Earth scientist weep with envy. This is where we've been trying to stabilize the quantum resonance cascade. 7 of our finest minds have already failed. 3 didn't survive their attempts. Nathan studied the massive equipment around him, his mind already racing with possibilities. Why risk bringing in an outsider? Surely your civilization has protocols for this kind of crisis. Protocols, Vieira's tone carried a hint of bitterness, are exactly the problem. We've grown too structured, too rigid in our thinking. We need something different. Something human? Nathan met her gaze. Perhaps. She moved closer, her height forcing him to look up. Your kind has an infuriating habit of finding solutions where we see only problems. It's as admirable as it is disturbing. You're not like the others, Nathan observed. You're willing to look beyond tradition when necessary. A trait that makes me both effective and dangerous, according to the Council. Her silver eyes studied him intently. They don't trust me. They trust you even less. Together, we represent everything they fear: change, chaos, the unknown. And yet here we are. Here we are, she agreed softly. The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken possibilities. The moment was broken by an alarm that sent vibrations through the station structure. Vieira's expression shifted to one of concern. The cascade is accelerating, she said. We're running out of time. The Council has granted you 3 days to solve what we couldn't in 3 years. If you fail, Earth becomes a cautionary tale about the dangers of primitive species. Her lack of denial was answer enough. Nathan turned to the equipment, rolling up his sleeves. Then we'd better get to work. Show me everything you've tried so far, and more importantly, show me what you haven't dared to try. As they began their work, neither noticed Counselor Thorne watching from the shadows, his expression dark with purpose. The human had passed the official trials, yes, but there were other ways to protect the purity of their civilization. Other ways to ensure that some boundaries remained uncrossed. For now, though, Nathan and Vieira worked side by side, their minds meeting across the gulf of stars and species, finding in each other something neither had expected: an equal. Time moved differently in the depths of the alien laboratory. Nathan had spent countless hours studying the cascade problem, his mind wrestling with concepts that pushed the boundaries of human understanding. But it wasn't the complexity of the science that kept drawing his attention, it was Vieira. She moved through the lab with practiced grace, her violet skin shimming under the quantum field monitors. Every so often, their hands would brush as they worked on calculations together, sending unexpected shivers through his body. The air between them had grown thick with unspoken tension. Your approach is unorthodox, she said, studying his latest modifications to their containment field. The Council would never approve. The Council's approval won't matter if we're all scattered across quantum space, Nathan replied, adjusting a setting. Sometimes you have to break rules to save lives. Vieira's silver eyes lingered on him. You say such things so easily. My people have lived by these rules for millennia. And now those rules are becoming chains. Nathan straightened, meeting her gaze. You know I'm right. Your civilization's greatest strength has become its weakness: perfect order, perfect control, perfect stagnation. Be careful, human, she warned, but there was no real threat in her voice. If anything, she sounded intrigued. Before Nathan could respond, the lab's door slid open. A younger alien entered, her skin a lighter shade of violet than Vieira's. She carried herself with the same rigid posture as the Council members, but her eyes held a spark of curiosity. Archon, she bowed slightly to Vieira. The Council requests your presence immediately. Alone. Vieira's expression hardened. Stay with the work, she told Nathan. And trust no one. She swept from the room, leaving Nathan with the younger alien. "I am Nyx," she said once Viera had gone. "The Archon's former protégé." She moved closer, studying Nathan with unconcealed fascination. "I never thought I'd see her risk everything for a human." "Risk everything?" Nyx's expression grew serious. "You don't understand our ways. The Archon's position, her very life, depends on maintaining the Council's trust. By bringing you here, by defending you, she's challenged thousands of years of tradition." Nathan's mind raced. The quantum cascade isn't just a scientific problem, is it? Very perceptive, human. Nyx touched one of the monitoring screens. "Our society is like this quantum field, perfectly ordered, perfectly stable, until suddenly it isn't. The cascade is as much a symptom as it is a crisis. And I'm the chaos element," Nathan realized. "The random factor that could either save everything or destroy it completely. Now you understand why some want you eliminated." Nyx's words carried a clear warning. "Counselor Thorn has already moved against you. The only reason you're still alive is the Archon's protection." Before Nathan could process this, alarms blared through the station. The quantum monitors flashed red, their readings spiraling into impossible patterns. "No," Nathan breathed, rushing to the control panel. "No, no, no. This is wrong. The cascade shouldn't be accelerating this fast unless..." His blood ran cold. "Unless someone's deliberately destabilizing it." Nyx paled. "Thorn. He would rather see our civilization fall than change." Nathan's fingers flew across the controls, trying to contain the growing instability. Where would Viera be meeting the Council? The Apex Chamber, but you can't. He was already running. The station's corridors twisted around him as he sprinted, following the mental map he'd built during his time here. Behind him, he could hear the growing whine of destabilizing quantum fields. Guards tried to stop him at the Apex Chamber's entrance. Nathan didn't slow down. Years of martial arts training on Earth served him well as he ducked under one guard's grab and used the alien's own momentum to throw him into his partner. He burst into the chamber just as Counselor Thorn raised some kind of weapon toward Viera. "The old order must be preserved," Thorn was saying. "Even if we must rebuild from ashes." The cascade was never natural, Viera realized, her voice thick with fury. "You engineered this crisis. A necessary sacrifice to prevent contamination from lesser species." Thorn's finger tightened on his weapon. "Goodbye, Archon." Nathan didn't think. He launched himself across the chamber, tackling Viera just as Thorn fired. Energy sizzled over their heads as they hit the floor together. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Nathan found himself staring into Viera's silver eyes, their faces inches apart. Despite the chaos around them, despite the quantum cascade threatening to tear reality apart, all he could focus on was the way she looked at him, with surprise, with gratitude, and with something deeper that made his heart race. Then reality crashed back in as the station shuddered around them. The quantum cascade was reaching critical levels. They had minutes, at most, before everything fell apart. And in those minutes, they would either save two civilizations or watch them both crumble into quantum chaos. The Apex Chamber erupted into chaos. Guards rushed in, weapons drawn, unsure whether to target Thorn or Nathan. The station's warning systems screamed as quantum instabilities rippled through its structure. "The cascade has gone critical," Viera announced, her voice cutting through the confusion. "If we don't contain it now, it will tear apart everything within a light year, including Earth." Thorn laughed, the sound bitter and cold. "Then our work here is done. Let the universe witness what happens when primitive species reach too far." Nathan helped Viera to her feet, his mind racing through calculations. "The containment lab, we were close to a solution. If we can get back there." "You'll never make it," Thorn sneered, raising his weapon again. The station's quantum shields are already failing. Soon, reality itself will unravel. Help us, Vieira demanded, addressing the other council members. Or everything our civilization has built will be destroyed by one man's prejudice. The council members looked at each other, centuries of rigid tradition warring with survival instinct. Finally, one stepped forward. The Archon speaks truth, she said. Arrest Counselor Thorn. As guards moved to subdue the rogue counselor, Nathan grabbed Vieira's arm. We don't have time for this. The cascade is exponential, we have maybe 10 minutes before it's irreversible. They ran through the station's corridors, which now rippled with quantum distortions. Reality flickered around them, one moment solid, the next threatening to dissolve into pure energy. They found Nix in the lab, working frantically at the controls. The containment fields are failing, she reported. I've tried everything in the protocols. Forget the protocols, Nathan interrupted, moving to the main console. Vieira, remember what we discussed about controlled chaos? We need to do it now, on a massive scale. Understanding lit her silver eyes. You want to fight chaos with chaos? That's never been attempted. Because your people always seek perfect order, Nathan's fingers flew across the controls. But quantum fields aren't meant to be perfectly ordered. They're meant to dance. Working together, they began implementing Nathan's desperate plan. Instead of trying to force the quantum cascade into stability, they would introduce calculated instabilities, like a controlled burn to fight a wildfire. It's working, Nix breathed, watching the monitors. The cascade is shifting. But victory was still far from certain. As they worked, the station's structure groaned around them. Reality rippled more violently, and Nathan saw glimpses of other dimensions bleeding through the walls. The calculations, he grimaced, fighting to keep his focus as reality warped around him. Something's still wrong. We're missing a catalyst, Vieira finished. She stood at the central control pillar, her expression resolved. The quantum fields need a focal point. Something to ground them. Nathan's eyes widened as he realized what she was suggesting. No. The energy levels would tear you apart at the atomic level. My physiology is more resilient than yours, she said softly. And my quantum signature is already attuned to this dimension. There has to be another way. There isn't time. She met his gaze, and in that moment, all pretense fell away. My people needed someone to show us that perfection isn't everything. That sometimes the greatest strength lies in embracing imperfection. You taught me that, Nathan Reed. Before he could stop her, she stepped into the quantum field. Energy crackled around her as she became the focal point for their desperate gambit. Nathan's heart seemed to stop as he watched her body absorb impossible amounts of energy. But she remained standing, her form glowing with power as she directed the quantum forces through herself. The cascade began to stabilize, reality firming around them as Vieira brought order to chaos through controlled imperfection. But the strain on her was obvious, her perfect composure cracking as she fought to contain energies that could reshape spacetime. Stay with me, Nathan whispered, adjusting the fields to try to reduce the strain on her. Please, stay with me. Around them, the station's alarms fell silent one by one as the quantum cascade was brought under control. But Nathan barely noticed. His entire world had narrowed to the glowing figure at the heart of the quantum storm, and the desperate hope that she would survive what she had chosen to do. As the final energy stabilized, Vieira collapsed. Nathan caught her before she hit the ground, cradling her glowing form as the last of the quantum energies dissipated. Her eyes fluttered open, silver irises now shot through with streams of quantum energy. Did it work? She whispered. You did it, Nathan confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. You saved everyone. A small smile touched her lips. We did it. Together. Then her eyes closed as unconsciousness claimed her, leaving Nathan holding her in the sudden silence of the lab, surrounded by the aftermath of their impossible victory. But even as relief flooded through him, Nathan knew their challenges weren't over. They had saved their civilizations from destruction, yes, but in doing so, they had shattered centuries of tradition and prejudice. And somewhere in the station, a captured but unrepentant Thorn still had supporters who would resist the changes to come. 3 days after the quantum cascade crisis, Nathan stood before the full council. The apex chamber had been repaired, though evidence of the recent chaos lingered in subtle distortions of its crystalline walls. Viera stood beside him, fully recovered but changed. Quantum energy still flickered occasionally in her silver eyes, a permanent reminder of her sacrifice. "The human has violated our most sacred laws," one council member declared. "He has introduced chaos into our ordered society. The human," Viera's harmonious voice carried new authority, "has saved our civilization from destruction. A destruction born of our own rigid thinking." "And what would you have us do, Archon?" another council member asked. "Abandon millennia of tradition?" "I would have us evolve," Viera replied. "As all living things must." She gestured to the quantum monitoring displays. "Look at what we achieved by embracing controlled chaos. Our understanding of reality itself has expanded." Nathan stepped forward. "Your civilization doesn't need to abandon its principles. But it needs to adapt them." The quantum cascade wasn't just a crisis, it was a warning. The universe itself rebels against perfect order. The council chamber fell silent as his words sank in. Finally, the eldest member spoke, her ancient voice carrying the weight of wisdom. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "it is time for change." She turned to Viera. "What do you propose, Archon?" Viera's expression remained composed, but Nathan saw the triumph in her eyes. "An exchange of knowledge. A bridge between our civilizations. We have much to teach humans about the cosmos, but they have much to teach us about adaptation, creativity, and the strength found in imperfection." "And who would oversee this exchange?" the elder asked, though her knowing look suggested she already knew the answer. "I would," Viera declared. "With Nathan Reed as my partner and equal." Murmurs filled the chamber. Nathan's heart raced at her words, not just their literal meaning, but the deeper implications in her tone. "You would bind yourself to a human?" One council member sounded scandalized. Viera turned to Nathan, and the look they shared made the rest of the universe fade away. "I would bind myself to this human." "The council must deliberate," the elder announced. But as the members filed out, she paused beside Nathan and Viera. "Change comes whether we will it or not. Wisdom lies in choosing how to embrace it." Later, in Viera's private chambers, they stood before the vast window that looked out over Earth in the distance. The quantum energy in Viera's eyes seemed to dance as she gazed at Nathan. "You're thinking about the consequences," she said softly. "Two civilizations, separated by light years of space and millennia of development," Nathan replied. "It won't be easy." "When has anything worthwhile ever been easy?" She moved closer, her height no longer intimidating but simply part of who she was. "You taught me that perfection isn't the goal. The beauty lies in the journey, in the challenges we overcome together." Nathan reached up, touching her luminescent skin. "And what about us? A human and an Archon? We're already bound by something stronger than tradition or biology," she said, taking his hand. "We're quantum entangled, you and I, changed by what we've experienced together." "Speaking of change," Nathan smiled, "I noticed your eyes still carry traces of quantum energy." A reminder, she touched her face with her free hand. "That some changes mark us forever. And some marks we choose to keep." As they stood together, watching their two worlds spin in the vast darkness of space, Nathan realized that their story wasn't ending, it was just beginning. They had saved their civilizations not through perfect order or pure chaos, but through finding balance together. "What happens now?" he asked, though he already knew the answer in his heart. Vieira's smile held all the mystery and beauty of the cosmos itself. "Now, my dear human, we make our own rules. We write our own story. And we show both our worlds that the greatest discoveries come not from clinging to what we know, but from daring to embrace what we don't." As she drew him close, the quantum energy in her eyes flaring with emotion, Nathan knew they had found something rare and precious, a love that transcended species, space, and time itself. Together, they would bridge worlds, challenge traditions, and prove that in an infinite universe, the heart knows no boundaries. In the space station's quantum core, their initial calculations still glowed on the monitors, a testament to what they had achieved. But the real miracle wasn't in the science, it was in the connection between two beings who had dared to defy the impossible. A human and an archon, bound together by courage, curiosity, and a love that would reshape two civilizations. The universe, vast and mysterious, continued its eternal dance around them. And somewhere in that cosmic ballet of order and chaos, two hearts beat as one, proving that sometimes the greatest revolution isn't in the stars, but in the spaces between them where love dares to bridge the infinite.